Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
Hey Eli, you know what we're going to do today that we forgot to do the last few episodes?
Introduce ourselves.
That's right. We're going to introduce ourselves first. I'm Rob.
Oh, I'm Eli. Hi.
Oh, there we go. Missed the cue. We're the Paladins of Podcast.
Oh, I am recording. Yep, that is something
Locally.
I'm doing.
All right. So I know it sounds kind of funny because we started including a lot more of our pre-episode in our intros, and we just jump in a lot. So for the listeners, you guys generally miss a lot of things that Eli and I talk about because we're trying to get ideas for the episode planned out, cool things going, and we both agreed. I think Eli made the suggestion a month and a half ago.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Where we just hit record, jump in, and we've really loved the content that's been produced, but we forget to introduce ourselves a lot. And it's just one of those fun things. So it's kind of like a behind the scenes few minutes before we get into full swing of things.
We tried name tags, and that just doesn't work.
No, it was really hard. I kept spelling my name wrong. It's bad. It would be embarrassing if they could see us.
So I hear you want to be a ninja.
Dude, I missed my opportunity. So I don't know why it hit me. Earlier today, I was just thinking, and I was like, shit. I regret not becoming a ninja. Like, I was never presented with the opportunity to do so. I just regret missing the opportunity had it arrived. I mean, like, man, could have been a different life right there. Totally different calling.
How exactly would it have arrived? Like, is that an elective at your high school, or?
Nope. I'm talking like stolen from the family, raised in the mountains kind of thing. So I was born a fat kid.
Darn. Yeah, you missed your opportunity.
That's right. I am an adult, and it's like there's no ninja calling anymore. So
I wonder if that's something you can pick up later in life. You can just, midlife crisis, become a ninja.
Dude, if it didn't take a lifetime of training, maybe.
I mean, hey, the rest of your life starts now.
Boy, I feel like I missed a boat on that. It feels like it started a while ago. Oh man. So do you mind if I lament a little bit and complain about something that I've talked about at least a few times before?
Always. I'm here to listen.
All right.
And talk, but hey.
As much as that sounds like therapy, I really look forward to your input. Still sounded like therapy. I like to condense therapy, I guess. So I'm a part of a few different Facebook groups, a few different Reddit groups, and I follow along with the tabletop communities. Not just Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, but some of my favorite games, RPG design and whatnot. And it seems like the biggest thing that constantly comes up in huge waves, besides what should I play after D&D 5th edition, is I hate challenge ratings. CRs suck. Figuring out how to encounter design compared to party level versus monster level, and it shows that there's still a huge lack of understanding. And I remember I had spoken with you about this, and I've covered it with Potato all the way back in season 1 about how your challenge rating is generally considered a character, style, class level equivalent, and it's matched as though the monster is optimized in a way to stand toe to toe and just have a all out slugfest alternating initiative back and forth. So that's your approximation. That's how it's designed. That's how it's functional. It's once you start adding in additional tactics that will help raise or lower CRs along with certain abilities. But the idea is specifically going up against one player, toe to toe, trading blows. And that's not something that people tend to think of. And it's driving me nuts because it's an easy concept once you understand it, but it takes so long to really grasp the idea of how it works. And when I wanted to talk to you about this earlier, you had mentioned, are there alternatives to this? And I've been trying to think about that, Eli, what kind of alternatives I could really try to present. And you had mentioned Hackmaster being your preferred game. They have a different style, not CR, but essentially similar, correct?
Well, there's no like universal experience point rating. So everything is loosely, everything is based off of experience points. So if you're a party of this size, you should be fighting like 500 experience points on average in a fight. And I don't think it's I don't think it's a great system either, because obviously there are things that are not really accounted for. Like there are some spiders that do no actual damage but can do poison and set you up for another encounter. So I do think there are like kind of like problems with that method. I mean, I think you're gonna have problems with every method. I think this is kind of one of the departments that really relies on GMs knowing the system and knowing what their players can do within the system.
And that I completely agree with, which is why when I look at systems that utilize the CR method, challenge rating method, I will consider the toe-to-toe relevant character that they would be going against. We all know that I have a rather large party, but when I scale it down to a smaller party, I still look for opponents or monsters that will battle at least one person semi-specifically in a toe-to-toe range. Action economy will always win, and it's always favored in the player's hand unless they have abysmal rolls. But I mean, you're just talking 4 against 1, and it has to be astronomical, either in their favor or abysmal rolls. So when I look at my CRs, I look at them as the base guideline. This is what it's going to be like if they go against one player. Now I have to add more players into that. I look at the skills, and like you said, knowing what my players can do, I can adjust and slide accordingly. The thing that a lot of CR encounter design builders don't tend to account for is pre-existing ailments, lower health, less resources, etc., between combats. So when you're doing encounter design as a whole or an entire session, you can wear your players down through extra smaller opponents, which makes CR more complex, because now you're like, well, I can't send the entire full CR. I got to scale it down difficulty wise because they are at less resources. So it's an art and it's a balance, but it's a sliding scale based off of slugfest between opponent and opponent, just toe to toe. And monsters are optimized. That's like, have you ever come across a game where the monster in the game had just a bullshit story feat that had nothing to do with anything, but it was really neat?
Like, I mean, I feel like usually abilities are try to be themed towards the creatures.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely seen some broken abilities for sure.
Right. But I mean, it's rare that you would come up across one where their ability or skill would be so ridiculous that it really has no place in the game. Like there are feat options in Pathfinder or D&D that you're like, under very specific circumstances would I take this. It doesn't fit the theme of the build, but damn, would it be fun. Monsters don't generally get that benefit.
In some games, I think so. But yeah, I mean, I think there's not often.
Right. So
I think building interesting monsters can be a skill.
yes. Yes, it can. Do you have any monsters in the bag that you haven't released yet?
Like for my parties or ones I've built, or I
Either?
don't understand the question. I feel like I don't build a huge amount of monsters. I like to try to build scenarios or like layers or situations because I feel like there's people out there that are way smarter than myself make amazing monsters, and I'll utilize them and then try to craft scenarios where the situation can be just as much of a challenge as the monsters they face. So
that's fair.
I also, I mean, in Hackmaster, the game that I primarily play, there's a lot of monsters that are very strong, and it's a low fantasy game, so you have a lot of options that, I mean, as they get stronger, they are able to face a lot more dangerous and varied opponents. So
now, is your Hackmaster game open sandbox style world?
yes.
Do you have areas that are just populated with monsters that are too high level for your party and you don't change it? Like, hey, this area is like the red zone for you guys. You go, you're likely going to die. Don't go there until you're feeling pretty confident about your levels.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I do have dangerous areas that the players should avoid, and when they go looking for rumors, they'll heal rumors for adventures that are much easier. You know, just paint grandma's house, and then there's also adventures that they probably should avoid, or someone else will take care of, or it can kind of be like a goal for later.
Sure.
Like we did hear about those ogres that were rampaging, you know, back in Hanix. Maybe now we're strong enough to fight them. Let's go and take that out.
I like
kind
that.
of give the players goals and things to kind of ask about.
Mm-hmm.
There is always the situation where they bite something more than they can chew, and that can be a tough one because you kind of have to drop some hints and or drop rumors, and it does kind of rely on like the characters or the players not being too overconfident,
Right.
But my players have been playing for a while, and so they kind of have a general gauge of how strong most of the monsters are that they encounter at this point. They've kind of entered a new area, and so they're now going through that process of being like worried whenever they encounter something new. They're like they try to figure out as much information as they can before diving into too deep.
I like that. And it got me thinking just there that I'll say one of my Saturday games with the newest, my contingency heroes, that particular group. One of my players has a lot of lore that he's been getting, and he is level 3. He's come across 2 individuals who have offered to, well, one individual who has offered to spar, and the other who just outright could have killed him but didn't. And he's feeling a little low, like, damn, these 2 people just really kicked my ass. He laid me flat. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from here. And I'm thinking, at level 3, you're just starting to essentially follow the path of your backstory. The backstory is that he's a samurai. He was given the sword of his father after his father passed away when he was, as of what he believes is an unintentional accidental murder. by his friends who wanted to break into his father's house, and shit just went wrong. So he's starting to finally walk the path of his father, or it's his adopted father, so his adopted father figure, and he's coming across characters who have known his father, and generationally, yeah, it's been plenty of time. They are incredibly strong. They're the kind of guys that would definitely be standing in the way or try to help you, but god tier level compared to a level 30 character. I think he's starting to gauge where his story is from that. And when I think about like monster design and counter design, I don't like to throw things at my players that are obnoxiously dangerous. Really tough, deadly, yeah, those I'll do. But out of the league, not something I usually do.
Even for your game with death flags, I feel like that's the perfect time to throw monsters that they can't defeat or are very tough or near impossible to defeat at.
I really would like to, but my players don't seem to handle the difficulty as well as I would expect or imagine, even with the safety net of Periculum Mortis. Now, a lot of them also play with the flag up, so they are risking death most times. And no, I do not want to kill them, but I also play my monsters encounters intelligently. Most characters, most creatures have a desire to live. Very few will generally fight to the death unless they're backed into a corner. So a lot of times they get to the last guy and he'll just run away. And he's like, nope, screw this. I'm done. I'll come back to fight another day. And they hate that. They hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Hate it. I'm like, yeah, he's not going to willingly just sit there and get pummeled by 6 of you. He's going to leave. So
I think that's one thing that's kind of lacking in the D&D 5th edition stat block is a tenacity or a morale in their stats of when do they retreat, when do they fall back, because nothing's going to fight to the death unless you're like a fanatical faction or insect.
Right. Something where I don't like to use the phrase "make sense" in this scenario, but it's got to make sense that they would fight to death. Back to the corner, no way out. Desperate, fanatical, incredibly aggressive, doesn't understand the concept of death, is not self-aware. Things with super low intelligence. Those kind of creatures make sense. But your intelligent beings, intelligent creatures, even something as fierce as a lion or tiger knows when they're outnumbered and will retreat. I mean, it's common in the real world, and I also don't like equating it to real world because in a fantasy setting, you want things to be semi-fantastical. But I have a hard time separating certain elements. Like,
yeah. Not to interrupt, but since we're talking CR, what's your party's average what is your party's CR, and what's the average encounter that CR that you give them?
All right, so Twisted Justice is currently level 5. We have 5 players right now. Average party level 5. And average CR that I can throw at them that is barely challenging, but stretches 2 to 3 rounds, is about CR 8. So by Pathfinder rules, I am 3 levels above average party level, should be considered deadly. But it's really not. My players of 5 are very well versed in skills, and even when playing intelligently with action economy on their side, ranged attacks, and certain abilities, they have ways to ground flying animals. They've got ways
with 5 players, don't you have an average CR of 7 or somewhere between 6 and 7?
They all just leveled up to 5, so generally 5 times 5 divided by 5 still levels, and then 1.5. So you could go up to 6.5 to 7, which is, you're right. So technically 7, 8, 9, around 9 is still 3 from 7. but they've got ways to ground flying enemies. They've got ways to double up attacks, advanced larger threat ranges on their criticals. They have higher action economy now because everybody has at least 2 attacks if they do a full round action. So they got all that on their side. Contingency heroes, on the other hand, is still average party level 3, and with 6 of them, they had a hard time facing 1 CR3 monster the other day. So I gauge it based on the players and the abilities. The thing about contingency heroes is that one of them is a strong believer that if they are entering combat, he has failed as a player. He does not like combat. His goal is to always avoid combat, even if it just simply means sitting outside of combat and finding another way around a dangerous area. So that does skew it down.
I think you should throw more dangerous monsters at your players that have the death flag up.
I'm slowly working it. Now that Twisted Justice is level 5, they have a more dangerous enemy coming up, and they are going to start exploring the world more. So they've developed the relationships, they've started to get the pacing of the game, and they're really going to start feeling the pressures of the outside world. Contingency heroes have been exploring, because I made a few, I don't want to call them concessions or mistakes. I made a few on-the-fly decisions that derailed my initial ideas. So,
yeah, your contingency heroes, they're the ones that failed a job, right?
Yes.
They seem willing to be able to fall back and retreat, but does your other party ever fall back or retreat from a challenge?
No, they do not. And they're the ones that get really mad when their opponents do. So contingency heroes definitely will fight, which is really funny because some of them complained about not having enough fights, and then when the fight came up, they charmed the monster to get out of it. I'm like, okay.
If I can ask, when you say your players complain when the monsters or NPCs are doing well, what does that kind of look like? Like, how are they? Like, are they just kind of like, are they sore losers, or do they get mad at the game?
I don't want to say they're sore losers because they certainly aren't. When Twisted Justice has the player that runs away, they get mad because everybody seems to run away. Everybody has self-preservation. They don't get to kill everything to dead. Like that's what they want to do. They want to kill it all to dead. Contingency heroes, on the other hand, hate the fact that it's difficult in the sense that they don't feel like they know what they're doing. Not like they don't know how to play the game, but their roles are either poor or they're making the wrong call for the scenario, and they just feel like they're kind of bumbling through. And to be absolutely fair and honest, it is incredible to watch as a DM, not because I'm amazed by their decisions, not because it's bad by any means, but because as a DM, I love the perspective of watching them go through this in such a perfect way, if that makes sense. Like, when you have the stories to recount, so like, this is what happened, this is how it went down. Like, they were their own foil, they were their own MacGuffins, they were their own biggest problems, they were their own enemies. They couldn't get out of their own ways. They kept trying really, really hard, and everything was against them. And if you were to put it in a movie or a TV show, they're the underdogs that you want to continuously watch and see succeed, and you root for, and you get excited when they have successes, and you share in that excitement. That's my favorite part. Whereas they really feel like they're screwing up. I'm like, this is perfect. You guys are incredible. You're literally failing upwards. Like, you're doing what players struggle with so often, and they don't realize it. So I
Yeah,
really commend them.
I think some of my party's most like fervent or best memories involve like at the very beginning. There's always something that goes wrong, and then they've got their success story after,
Mm-hmm.
and it usually does remit the part where the thing that originally went wrong was one of them doing something absolutely ridiculous, or random, or just a absolutely abysmal roll.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you institute any sort of rule of cool?
What do you mean by that?
So when I do a rule of cool, mine is if you explain to me exactly what you're going to do and how you want it to turn out, and it's going to be epically awesome, your I will rule of cool it. Whether there's an actual check that you want, or if you need to BS it some way, and we make up a roll for it, we figure out a way for it to be absolutely possible, plausible, and likely. So even if you fail with success. That's how I do my rule of cool. Nothing's out of bounds, nothing's off the table. It's just super freaking cool. Movie style, I guess.
We don't have anything like that is predetermined, like where a player can be like, I'm going to rule of cool this, and then they describe something. But it's more the situation where, since we're more often than not, we're rolling the dice and then, describing what happens after. If a player is just absolutely rolls an amazing roll or a critical success, then there's a number of times where I'll be like, what just happens here? And then the player really has the freedom to describe it how they like. So we don't have anything quite as formalized, but
that's okay.
We do something similar.
Yeah, and it's one of those kind of things I enjoy, the rule of cool. A lot of times I'll have players ask me about it after they absolutely suck and fail at something. They're like, can we rule of cool something? I'm like, what do you have in mind? I really like to give my players the spotlight. It helps differentiate the idea between me versus them, and it also helps build that idea that their characters are fantastical heroes, that anything is possible. But those are the kind of games I like, really high fantasy style games with a lot of opportunities and options for heroes to shine, ridiculously so. They are kind of like the pinnacle of heroes, even if they suck. Like, hey, you're still fucking heroes, guys. Like the worst heroes, but you're heroes.
That's kind of the difference between high fantasy and low fantasy. Is my characters can't do everything and anything, and more often than not, they are failing when they start, and some things are out of reach. And as they progress, as they grind boars in the forest, then they do become those heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And the world doesn't really scale around them. So when you're level 1, I mean, a guard is a tough opponent. But as you level up and become a hero of yore, it's not like there's level 10 guards. There might be some palace guards, which are probably leveled characters, but you could just start murdering some guards as you level up.
That's lovely.
But there are, like, the opposite side of that is there are monsters out there where you wander out, you might run into an ogre.
Mm-hmm.
At low levels, that's scary, but as you get stronger, the ogre's the easy one to fight.
Right. And I like that. I have I classified some of my NPCs, party opponents. I guess I kind of tier them 3 tiers. They generally don't scale with the party. So when they meet exceptional bad guys, the bad guys are usually much higher levels, and they don't get more powerful or gain levels unless they're actively trying to do so. So for example, if one of my NPCs is a bad guy and he is actively trying to get more powerful, he will slowly scale. Nowhere near as fast as the party, but he's usually a little farther ahead than the party is anyway. Gives them something to strive to for, reach to. The bad guys never, except for in Fable 2, the bad guys never just a shotgun blast mid monologue and you win. So the other tiers are my low level, like you said, guards. When you're just starting out, guards are in the way. But as you get higher levels, they haven't scaled up. They got to keep the common folk in line, not the heroic, monstrous people that are, close to gods at this point compared to commoners. And then there are the mid range, those who are either a few levels low, a few levels high, possibly scale, possibly don't, depending on when they come into the game. But generally, those NPCs are background filler. But it's weird. I don't know how to describe it. I enjoy your format and system. I love the low fantasy style. But when I love running the high fantasy. Like, damn.
I still enjoy, I still do enjoy some high fantasy stuff. I don't know, there's something about the nitty gritty low fantasy that I really like.
I love it. I think it's not, the word realism comes to mind, but I don't want to say more realistic. I love the low fantasy simply because it's lower fantasy, if that makes sense. Like, if I have 1,000 monsters in a single bestiary, that's cool. I've got a huge choice, but as a player, if I've got 30 to choose from, and it takes me a long time to learn all 30, and they're increasingly more difficult and obscure, and they fit the world, I love that. I prefer that. I think that's awesome. I love that smaller, dangerous scale as a player. That's that and Space Marines.
Which is a very high fantasy. I love high fantasy for sci-fi games. That's my jam.
I've had people offer to run. They're like, Rob, we'll run Shadowrun for you. I'm like, cool, let's do it. 6 months later, no Shadowrun game. I don't ever get a high fantasy game.
Sign up for some games at Gen Con.
Dude. Oh man. Yeah. So this is a great time for this kind of news. Are you all set for Gen Con?
In terms of, we just submitted events.
Okay.
I think just the other day, so I'm going.
Good deal. Epic Table Games applied for and got their press pass, so we are there tentatively. I've got a child on the way, which is breaking news. It might be born while I'm supposed to be there. Funny story, my wife said that if they are born while I am there, she won't tell me until after I get back. She's a turd.
You are on dangerous ground.
She's a turd, but she supports me in what I want to do. So it's one of those things. I don't want to miss my kid's birth. But anyhow, we got the housing thing settled. We're going to be connected to the Indianapolis Convention Center via Skywalk. So we don't have to deal with what we had to deal with last year, which was horrible.
I was in an Airbnb last year.
Yeah?
A couple blocks away, yeah.
Nice.
That worked well.
I specifically looked for places that served me at least a continental breakfast.
That seems like a smart way. It's always good. Breakfast is the most important meal.
Heck yeah. Certainly at a hero's feast, but I mean, it's a hotel. It serves yogurt and bagels.
And with continental breakfast like that, you can snag a few and you have snacks all gone.
Agreed. I do. Anyhow, so far off topic. Oh man. Yeah, I want to do Gen Con differently this year than we did it last year. So last year, what we ended up doing, Mike, our tech guy and a good friend, had scheduled a whole lot of events. Like we packed Friday full of the events, trying to get information, news, things to report on, things to deliver, and back to back to back to back. by Sunday, we were so exhausted and wore out. We only went to one actual seminar style event, spent most of the day in the trade room, and just tried to take in as much of the convention as possible. This year, I think I'm going to just schedule some of the seminars that look the absolute best, try to get a game or two in, and maybe not spend a fortune in the exhibitor hall.
But that's impossible.
Yeah, it
Although
certainly is.
this last year, I've been trying to focus on because I've got a lot of RPG systems, I got a lot of dice, got a lot of miniatures, but I try to focus on buying art. That's my next. That's kind of what I want to focus on.
Mhm.
So, but that also is very expensive.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and some good cosplay stuff. I have a really cool wizard hat that I think
Yeah.
I bought last year. It was so exciting.
I I dress up for my D&D when I DM. I literally thought about only bringing my outfits that I DM in, so I don't look like a regular person anymore. I cosplay something different each day of the convention. I thought about.
How much time do you schedule for like doing like the random free or pop-up events? Because there's a lot of really cool stuff like those gaming halls that are open 24/7 that
Mhm.
will just you can walk up and play a board game with a random group of people.
Um, Schedule them. I'd like to say accordingly. When we did it last year, we scheduled one, and we ended up also using our general admission style tickets for one later in the day when we decided that we just needed a break from feeling so rushed. It was fun. It's cool. Um, One of the biggest difficulties, hurdles for me in particular, was that in our first inaugural year with our press pass, I was really trying to focus a lot on the tabletop aspect, and there's plenty of tabletop RPG aspect because as Epic Table, we don't really cover board games by any means. So I wanted to stay hyper vigilant and hyper focused. So many board games and card games and other forms of tabletop games are abundant and available that I feel like I really missed out a lot on half of my other passion trying to be so focused on just the pen and paper style. So,
Oof, there's a lot from war games to board games to tabletop RPGs. There's and video games now. There is a lot.
I seen only two video games, like true video games, that were RPG based. One of them was a not an Oculus game. Maybe it was Oculus. I don't remember. Um, 3D virtual tabletop VR live play style game. Like literally, somebody was acting as the DM and they were dropping miniatures and shit into the map as the players had the virtual reality sets on and they were making their moves as a player character by all the standardized rules for the game. It was weird but interesting.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
I know you play in person. Have you thought about doing? I see all the time tables that have like an inset screen where people will like virtual tabletop a map up below like glass of some kind.
Mhm.
Have you ever thought of doing something like that?
I have done it once.
Oh, what do you think about it?
I I am very particular, if that makes like a sense, if you can see where this is going. I like the art style to fit what I envision, and if I don't make it myself, uh, it's hard to find, and so I'll end up settling because I don't have time to always invest to make them the way I want. Um, if you eliminate that, it's neat, but it feels like an accessory and a gimmick that kind of wears out quickly. I prefer drawing on a hard top surface or something I can erase with dry erase marker. And I like having 3D walls. Like I'd love to be able to push the game closer into 3D war game, but I do absolutely like the quick draw and the walls. See, you got them.
So last Thursday at my Traveler game, which I played with my dad was like, "Your Christmas present finally came," and apparently I had a Christmas present of some 3D printed terrain.
Nice.
And it started off as just like a box set, I think, like a small set of walls.
Mhm.
But then it got delayed so much that whoever was on the other end was just like, "Oh, and I'll throw in this and this and this and this." And so I ended up just getting this huge set of 3D painted walls and doors and even several miniatures, which are
Winning.
real nice.
That is incredible. That is incredible. Who is
The Beaver and Broadsword.
Beaver and Broadsword?
I think it must be a seller on Etsy.
Possibly. I'm not familiar with it. So,
But shout out those guys.
yeah, absolutely.
They were late, but they delivered a lot of really cool miniatures. And now the problem is I got all this like random stuff now.
Mhm.
Now I have to build a dungeon out of that so I can, because we do our one time per year we get together on a weekend and we're gonna play in person. So now I have to try to lay it all out and design a dungeon to fit in this.
You can do it.
And everything that I got.
Definitely.
It's gonna be the weirdest way to design a dungeon, though. So I'll have to.
Based on what you have?
Yeah, I'll have to figure out the square footage of the size.
Do you?
Oh, because I have like just like a random collection of walls and centerpieces and random dungeon terrain.
Fair. Now we're pushing close to our 45 minutes, but you're mentioning dungeons, so I've got a question.
Oh, if I don't die, yeah.
Please don't
What's up?
die, because this is an important question. How are you coming on your Dungeon 23?
Oh, hey, that's not a response. I got a little bit distracted because I started, I first started using the time diligently to work for, they're doing the Dungeon 23, and then I started devoting the time, I started getting really inspired for my home campaign, so I started devoting a lot of that time towards working on the campaign I've got at home. So, I feel like I betrayed the nature of Dungeon 23 because I don't have as many rooms going as I should. But
Okay.
I have been putting a lot of time into working on my home game, and maybe more than usual. So I shout out my players.
Yeah, I'd say
What
so.
about you?
All right, so we are about 40-ish days into the year.
That's correct.
I have successfully completed 8 rooms.
Oh man, yeah, it's although I will say that a couple days ago I did go back to it and start reworking the design of how I wanted to lay it out. So I have put some extra time into it, but man, did I do worse than I expected.
I really thought I was going to do a little better because I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick a formula that is just easy on the surface and I've got minimal shit to do from there. And I realized that it's either incredibly brilliant or I'm just going to shoot myself in the foot repeatedly. Because as a prison, which is the basis for my dungeon, every room can look the same, which means I really just have to design stupid traps and encounters and things for them to get around. Which I generally only generate when I need to. So I designed one room and copy and pasted like 500 times. I don't think that counts. So,
Well, do we want to try doing something like February 23, a dungeonary?
I love the idea of Dungeonary. The fact that we're already at February 17th-ish. We're already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, okay. March dungeon. March on Dungeon Arch.
Yeah.
23.
If we try to plan for the name and dungeon thing, we might end up just back in February of next year. But I will tell you what, by the end of the month, I will at least have one incredible thing to do in my mega dungeon. I will have at least a boss level built.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to at least copy as many days as I've done in January into February, and because I got about 15 of them, about half of them. I started missing some at the end, so I think if I can get another 15 every month, yeah.
You know that February has the least amount of days in it, right?
But January is when I started missing stuff. So
right, but
just one extra. If I'm making every other day,
but we don't have 15 days left in the month.
Well, I guess math was never my strong suit.
As we play with dice and have to add numbers constantly, right? It's not
wow, look at the time. Oh man, jeez.
All right. Any awesome final words besides do better at math, kids? That sounds bad. Good night,
cool
guys.
Math for kids is or cool math games. That's a fun site to learn more about math.
Yeah. And if you want to learn more about tabletop games, epictablegames.com. One day I'm going to get a blog post up.
Yeah, and check out Populated Hexes Monthly. Just found them. They're awesome.
Love it. That's on Drive Through RPG, right?
Yep.
Oh, and your Beaver and Dungeons?
Oh, I don't remember. I just read that. Beaver and Broadswords.
Beaver and Broadswords. Look them up, too. They are, Eli likes them.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.